How's it going, guys? My name is Graham and welcome to Two Left Thumbs. For the 5th fall in a row, we've now seen the release of a new Jackbox Party Pack, a collection of games that you play in a party environment. Everyone crowds around whatever the many different devices are you're allowed to play these games on, and then you connect through your phone to interact with the game. No apps required or anything like that, you just go to jackbox.tv. It's super convenient and always a ton of fun. Thank you to the Jackbox team for sending us an early copy of it, that was very cool. First up is You Don't Know Jack Full Stream. You Don't Know Jack is a long-running series of trivia games that eventually got folded into the Jackbox Party Pack world. They've always said the idea is to blend pop culture and high culture. So trivia questions will be about one or the other, but the question is always presented in a way that blends both. There's not a ton to explain here, it's just really well done trivia. But then there's fun lightning rounds like Dis or Dat. It gives you two different things that could be easily confused. One of the ones we saw was ska bands or recipes by Guy Fieri. As it rapidly shows you these things across the screen, you just say which of the two you think it is. There's an insane amount of different categories and spins that get put on this, so I definitely won't cover all of them. I probably haven't even seen all of them. It might seem kind of boring to just have a trivia game in the pack, but it's really well done, and it's kind of where these guys originally made their name, so it's really neat to have it brought back into the fold on Party Pack 5. Everything's presented through a fictional streaming service, Binge Pipe, which is a really good name for a streaming service, but it's very nefarious. There's all these tiny hints of evil corporate overlords that's very funny. Players who do poorly also earn screws, which they can use to make answering questions harder for the other players. These screws only have a one-time use, but it does affect every other player. It could affect them in a variety of ways, like inserting random nonsense into the middle of the answers. Or they have to scroll through the terms of service before they're allowed to choose. It makes it very frantic, it's a lot of fun, and it's a good way for that losing player to make up some ground. And as you would guess from the subtitle Full Stream, it is fully integrated into streaming services. You can have an audience of up to 10,000 guessing along beside you. Pretty insane, but unless you're a content creator, something you're probably not going to make a ton of use of. It doesn't have any cool gimmicks like Trivia Murder Party did, but it's very quick, much more difficult overall, and has quite a bit of variety to keep things fun, so I really enjoyed this one. Next we tried Split the Room, which I think is maybe one of the most intriguing ones they've done. Everyone's used to games like Quiplash, where whoever gets the biggest laugh wins. I'm wording that very specifically because it's not always about who's funniest. You can win games like Quiplash just by having funny callbacks to things from that night, even if it wasn't that clever. Split the Room is a cool new take because it requires you to be funny and clever. The idea here is that the game prompts you with an A or B situation. Kind of a would you rather type scenario. The game is already filled in the A and you have to come up with the B. The tricky part is that you don't necessarily want everyone to pick your answer. You need to try and come up with something that you think half the people in the room will pick. You score the highest points if you can get a 50-50 split in the room. You see? Kind of makes sense? So if you try and go for a big laugh or the big obvious answer, 100% of people will vote for you or the other way, and you get next to no points. If the way you frame the two choices is so tricky that people spend a long time trying to think through their answers, you score even more bonus points. There's a real art to crafting your answers here. As much as I think it's hard to beat a classic like Quiplash, this is maybe one of the most fun word-based games I've played on Jackbox in a long time. There's a lot of nuance to picking your answers, and sometimes it totally blows up and doesn't work, but that's cool. Part of me kind of wishes that it didn't show you who made the A and B. It's always highlighted in a way that you know who came up with which. I think that people would be less biased with their answers overall. Or maybe just find a group of friends to play with who aren't going to cheat the system. The final round was a little weird. In the final round, it splits the room in half, where half the people answer one prompt and the other half answer the other. Then it's the same idea as you being paired up with something predetermined. I'm not convinced that this final round really came together the way they were envisioning. The presentation of it is a little bit different, and people are working off the same prompts. But it's still the same exact idea of wanting to split the room. Because at this point, everyone knows who came up with which answer, and you kind of go head-to-head against people who had the same prompt as you. It really feels like it incentivizes people to favor their votes in one direction, to force the room to not be split. It's still interesting, I don't know if it works as well as the first round, and people really have to be truthful for it to work. It's too bad because I really love the concept and the first round is so great. Next up, we tried out Patently Stupid, this year's drawing game. Seems like they usually try to include at least one drawing-based game, which I very much appreciate. There's a lot of steps to this one, and if people are willing to commit, it is crazy fun. Everyone's presented with 2 problems that each have blanks in them. You fill those in with whatever you like, it puts together a big deck full of those answers, shuffles them around, and hands everyone one each. This is now the problem that you as an inventor must work to fix. You now have to come up with an invention, name it, draw it, and give it a tagline. Just as an added thing, there's a really fun theme going on here. You're in like a shady meeting room of a cheap hotel. Everything is being presented as kind of a sales pitch for some snake oil scheme. You can practically smell the old coffee and stale donuts in the corner. Then the whole screen is framed like blueprints, and you have to sketch out your drawing on a crappy little napkin. I think the main part that makes this fun is if people are willing to commit to the final part of it. At the end, once you've created an invention, named it, and tagged it to solve the problem you were given, you're now given the option as to whether or not you want to give a sales pitch to the group. I highly recommend giving it a go. It's really funny to watch people bumble through trying to explain what they had in mind when they invented this thing in the last minute. The game gives you the ability to choose what order you reveal things in, the picture, the title, the tagline. It's really fun working through those motions, but if you're not that confident in your ability to public speak, anything like that, you can hit a present for me option, and it goes through the motions of rolling out the different parts of it for you. I imagine that's handy for streamers as well, because anyone who's connected remotely wouldn't actually be able to speak and present it themselves. At the end of rounds in this game, you then have a funding period. Everyone is given money to spend, like $5, $3, and $100, and you allocate those to your top 3 picks. Any invention that crosses the necessary threshold is then funded, and anyone who invested in that gets returns on it. The higher you rank that in your picks, the more you get in your returns. There's a cool balance there of what do you want to see funded versus what do you think everyone else is going to vote for. Remember before that I said everyone picks 2, and then 1 of each of those is handed out to everyone? That means half of them were set aside. Whoever wins that first round is given that remaining half, and they choose one of them to be the problem that everyone has to tackle. So now everyone is creating their own invention, drawing, title, tag, and all, and then everyone presents at the end of how they would tackle the problem, same as they did before. I think I have a personal soft spot for drawing games in Jackbox. Drawful is still one of my favorites. Bidiots is up there with one of my favorites. Last year I was all crazy excited that Civic Doodle was the best drawing game they had ever done, but looking back on it, it wasn't funny more often than it was. This one I think is actually very well done and very funny. I'm a huge sucker for the setting that they gave it. But I also think because you can draw a title and tag it, it gives you a lot of opportunity to put your personal flair on it. We had a few instances where someone had a terrible drawing, but they were able to salvage it all with a really funny tagline. I don't want to jump the gun and say it's on the same level as Drawful and Bidiots, but I say it's probably up there. One setting that I think would have been great for this game that could extend its life overall, the ability to include entirely unique problems. The fill in the blank style provides an insane amount of opportunity, but some people might want more customization than that. I think it would be a simple addition, and it would help extend the life for some people who want to get really weird and creative with it. Next up is Mad vs. City, a game about giant transforming robots having a rap battle while destroying a city. That's probably the coolest concept for a Jackbox game so far. Everyone's paired off, you're told who you're going to be going head-to-head rap battling with, and everyone is given a simple prompt like give a verb. Sometimes it's generic like noun or verb, or sometimes it's something more specific like fictional place or time of year. You fill in that first word, it becomes the last word in the first line of your verse. You're then shown that full first line, and you have to come up with the entire second line by yourself. You do this exact same process once more for the third and fourth lines, and you have your crafted verse for the rap battle. The greatest possible thing about this one is the robotic voices that actually read out the verses that you wrote. It's hilariously awesome to watch that play out.
My rhymes will blast you all the way to Narnia. I'll trump your tower like Melania.
You might want to study up on your grammar a little bit, because if you misinterpret and put in something like running instead of run, then it's going to screw up the whole flow of everything. That first word might not actually fit in the line. But who cares, it's a rap battle. People will know what you meant, and poets have been bending the English language for the sake of rhythm for centuries. If you're too slow on this one, it puts in a random line for you, and so it's totally going to scrap your verse. It's not going to be funny anymore or work at all. Some of those results ended up actually being kind of funny in themselves, and it's necessary that they have something in the game like that. I felt that you were given ample time based on the task at hand, but you can always extend the timers. You can do that in any game, but I specifically pointed out in this one because I think it benefits a lot from it. I think the funniest results came when people put some actual time and thought into their answers. Sure, you might have a couple minutes downtime in between, but then you get these devastatingly hilarious verses delivered. one robot raps and then the other, and then everyone votes on which verse they liked better, voting on who actually won the battle. As you would expect, a lot of these came down to one particular line that was just way funnier than the rest. We thought it would be cool if you could vote on your favorite line or pair of lines. Or maybe across the two robots you would have 4 pairs of lines altogether and you could rank those first to fourth. There's interesting ways you could play around with the scoring there, because someone could have your first and second favorite line, but then the other robot could still win overall if you thought that their overall verse made more sense. There's some opportunity for some cool voting structure there, and I think it would add an extra layer to it. But as is, the game is already a lot of fun. The second round was then just another round of rap battles. I think the prompts maybe that it gave you were more specific and more difficult to work with, but otherwise it all plays out the same. And I'm totally okay with that. The second round is worth more, most money, most points overall wins, pretty straightforward. I can easily see how one like this won't be for everyone, but we all thought it was hilarious. And finally, the last game that I specifically saved till the end. Zeeple Dome. Right away, this is more of a game. It doesn't even feel like a Jackbox game. I appreciate that they tried to do something different here, but I've always found that when you sit down to play a Jackbox game, you want to do some trivia, you want to draw some goofy stuff. You want to be a little bit of a wordsmith to trick your friends or make them laugh. The only other game in all the party packs I can think of that's this game-like is Bomb Corp. But even then, that game is frantic and all about discussion and logic and working things through. In Zeeple Dome, you drag your finger across your screen, and then you kind of slingshot your little astronaut guy at little targets on the screen. You're working together, it's space themed, you bump into each other. Am I doing enough to sell how lackluster and overall not fun that this was? Again, I get that they were trying to shake things up, break the mold a little bit, but it just didn't do it for me. If I wanted to play a goofy minigame like this, we would pop in Mario Party or something. It's not really at the heart of what I'm looking for when I sit down to play Jackbox games. We set Zeeple Dome down and might never come back to it again. That might seem super harsh, but in what I consider to be an overall very strong pack, it just makes a dumpy game like this stand out even worse. Now this gets harder to do with each passing year, but I know people are going to ask where this stacks up against other party packs. I think my personal favorite from this year was maybe Split the Room based on the concept alone. It seemed like everyone else was really big fans of You Don't Know Jack. You'd say maybe the room was a little split on that one. Madverse City and Patently Stupid are both equally creative and super fun. All 4 of these games actually have really great presentations overall. The themes are fantastic. Usually the settings is something that's just kind of a fun little additional tag on, but ever since a game like Trivia Murder Party that nailed it so perfectly, it's something I am more on the lookout for. And I would say this is the first time that every single game actually nailed that. They all look incredible, they all sound incredible, they're all very fun, and they suck you in. So we're dealing with 4 very strong standout games and 1 complete absolute forgettable dud. I was very generous with my review of the Party Pack 4, but once I realized I didn't actually like Civic Doodle as much as I thought I did, that kind of lowers my opinion of that one a little. Having 4 really strong games actually puts this one on par with 2 and 3 for me. As always, it's really going to matter who you're playing these with. I'm not entirely sure if anything in this pack individually becomes one of the best pack games of the whole series, but it's pretty rare to have 4 this strong in one pack. And for that, it's totally highly recommended for me. I think you guys would really love it. If you guys have any questions or comments about this pack or the series, let us know down in the comments below. In the end cards here, I'll have a link to a playlist where we play all the Party Pack 5 games. There will also be a playlist where you can see every single Jackbox game we've ever played. I hope this review is helpful to you in some way, and I hope you guys have a lot of fun out there. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again soon.